Yo, what is up, guys? It's Pedro here. So, we are here. It is draft day. We are about 3 hours away from the start of the 2025 NFL draft. And I am here with my guy, Abdullah from DMV Sports Zone. He also has his own YouTube channel. So, we're going to be previewing the draft today, talking about the latest draft rumors, including, I believe, momentum building for the Commanders to select Nick Scorton, and then we'll talk about a possible Jalen Ramsey trade. So, Abdullah, how you feeling? Draft day, a few hours away from the first overall pick.
Yeah, no, it's great this time of the year. For me, these next couple of days are like a holiday for me. I think the NFL draft it shakes up a lot going this offseason, and for the Commanders, I still think they're going to trade back. I don't know if it's in the first round or later in the draft, but I think they're going to acquire more draft capital to booster this defensive line, and I think offensively maybe get that running back, that explosive running back late in the rounds. I can't wait to talk about it. But again, this is exciting, man. The Commanders, and it's like we have a competent organization that knows that the guys they're drafting are actually going to be put into play and actually produce out there.
Yeah, exactly, man. And yeah, we are 3-ish hours away. So let's talk about some of the latest draft rumors from, various different sources, what, the Commanders are likely to do, what everyone is saying about the Commanders and some trades, stuff like that. What's up, Reggie Reg, my guy? The Commanders, they don't have to take quarterback. That's great. They took Jaden Daniels last year, got his jersey on right now. I guess you can't see the number, but got his jersey on right now. And right now, the priority is defensive end. And after defensive end, you can throw in cornerback. I don't think it's a huge need, but it is a premium position. And in terms of the future, they don't necessarily have a lot of guys besides Mikey Sanders still. So you could add there. I would say running back, like Abdullah said, is another guy or another position they need to go after. And then, it couldn't hurt to add another receiver, another offensive lineman. So the Commanders are in a good spot where they really could go like any position in the first round besides, I would say, quarterback. I mean, any other position, maybe it's not desired, but you could take a tight end, if someone falls. You could take a linebacker, if they fall, if it's a really good guy. So, there's options. There's options. Abdul, what are you thinking in terms of what the Commanders are going to do tonight in the first round? Let's say, I know you said you think they'll possibly trade back, but if they don't trade back, what is something or who are kind of the guys you think they're going to take? And what's up, Vance? Appreciate you pulling up. What's up, Mike? And again, Reggie Reg says, I think we might go running back. And yeah, I could see that. Definitely a position of need. Travion Henderson, Omarion Hampton. I've been seeing Omarion Hampton a lot on these mock drafts recently. So watch out for him as well.
Yeah, no, I think I love Mike Green out of Marshall, but I just don't know if he's going to be there at pick 29. Also, James Pierce out of Tennessee. Shamar Stewart is a guy who didn't really produce a lot in college when it comes to statistics, but his potential is pretty high. So those are some guys. I mean, also from the title of this video thumbnail, Nick Scorton is a guy that potentially could be drafted by the Commanders. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all pans out because at pick 29, you can get a running back outside the first one. He'll still be elite. There's so many cases of that in the NFL right now. But Omarion Hampton, a guy at UNC, I think he's probably the second best running back right after Ashton Genty. But like I mentioned, our guy from Virginia Tech, Bashaw Tune, is a guy that you could potentially target in the later rounds. Also, the two guys out of Ohio State, I think I always forget their names, but those two guys are someone you look at in later rounds. And receiver, I think right now I'm comfortable with Luke McCaffrey and Noah Brown battling for that wide receiver 3 position. I wouldn't say it's a need, but I wouldn't mind if they go after a guy in day 2 or day 3. So for the Commanders, I think edge rusher is the number one need. I think if you want to solidify this defensive line, you got to get a perennial edge rusher. I mean, look at Dallas. They have Micah Parsons. The Eagles' defensive line is insane. And New York has Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence. So if you want, especially since you're playing at a division where you're going against Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Giants might get it on the quarterback, and you're going against CeeDee Lamb. Like these are elite weapons in your division. So you got to somewhat boost his defense, and it starts with the edge rusher. People talk about quarterback being a really important position in football. I think edge rusher is right behind it. You got to get a guy who is a game wrecker. And for so long here in Washington, really, we thought it would be Chase Young, but with injuries and all, just wasn't the same. So I think at pick 29, and if you trade back, I'm all for that as well. But if you stay put, you have to go edge, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. And the running backs, I think you were trying to say is Travion Henderson and then Quinshawn Judkins. I put a tweet out yesterday. I would be really happy if we got one of the three Ohio State stud offensive players, Quinshawn, Travion, and then Omeke Ibuka. I think all those guys are studs. Ibuka will be a first round pick. I think Henderson probably a first round pick, if not a top 5 pick in the second round. And then Judkins will probably be in the second round. Let's say hi to some people in the chat. Already says hi to Vance, Reggie Reg. What's up, Sean? What's up, my guy GG Mon Gaming, Sean Garner, Derek. Appreciate all y'all for coming through. So we'll talk about corners in a second, Derek. I have been seeing a decent amount of cornerbacks mocked to the Washington Commanders. Let's talk about Nick Scorton, who is in the title of this video. I've been seeing a lot of mocks with him going to the Commanders. Ben Standig was talking about it a couple of days ago. He reiterated it yesterday and today. John Kine mentioned it as well and said he agrees with Ben Standig. So I think Nick Scorton isn't necessarily their ideal pick, but it's a fallback. Very, very likely that Nick Scorton will be there when they pick. I would say his range, realistically, I think we're probably the earliest he would get picked, maybe like 25. Let's say the earliest he gets picked is like 25 and then latest like 35, 38. So there is a big-ish range there. I mean, not that big, but I would say, it would be a safe pick that, the Commanders can go to. He's good against the run, good pass rusher. Didn't have a ton of sacks this past year at Texas A&M, but had double-digit sacks the year before at Purdue. And the reason why he didn't have as many sacks, in my opinion, is they kind of asked him to bulk up a lot, and he put on like 20, 30 pounds and just wasn't the same, explosiveness, didn't have that same explosiveness and speed. So just something to think about with him. And obviously you want, Azaraku, I would like James Pierce, Mike Green, all of those guys above Nick Scorton. But if those guys aren't there, maybe some of the other prospects like Malachi Starks, Ibuka, Henderson, Hampton, if all those guys aren't there, Booker, who the offensive line, I believe, left guard out of Alabama, he is another guy to watch. Keim said if he is there, they will run to the podium unless someone else is there that they really like. So just think about that. There's some guys that, we haven't been talking about a lot, like Nick Scorton and Booker, but Booker is a guy to watch out for on draft day. What's up, Uptown Dre, my guy? I've been watching for a minute. Big FSU fan. Also, thoughts and prayers with everyone at FSU. Obviously, terrible thing that happened this past week. But Uptown Dre, appreciate you for pulling up. If you guys are in the comment section below, go ahead and comment down below your guys in this draft day you want the Washington Commanders to take. Sean Gardner says Michael Gallup will make the roster. He has a chance for sure. All right, I'm going to go with, a guy that I would really like, a guy that I'm okay with, and a guy that I wouldn't be so happy with. So while I do that, Abdullah, you think about that. So a guy I would be really happy about. I mean, there's a bunch of different options, but realistically, Donovan Azaraku, he would be a guy I would be really happy with. Boston College stud, I believe, led the all of college football in sacks this past year. Guy I would be okay with is someone like Nick Scorton or Malachi Starks. Harrison, the cornerback out of Kentucky, I would be like about. Probably wouldn't be like happy with it. I'm trying to think of any other guys that I would be like, decently happy with. There's some other names for sure. I'll let Abdullah get them. Henderson as well. Someone I wouldn't like. And, I think a lot of Commanders fans agree with this, but there probably are some that like him. And I have seen some. Shout out to my guy Mason. But someone I wouldn't want is Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M defensive lineman, 4.5 sacks in 3 years, I believe, in college. Come on. That's just, I'm not drafting a guy in the first round with that. I don't care what traits he has. You have to at least show a little bit in college. And yeah, he maybe had some pressures. He was good against the run. I mean, his pressure numbers weren't insane though. So the fact that he's being projected to, be drafted in the top half of the first round, to me, top 20 is crazy. I would not touch him in the first round, even like, maybe in the second round, but I would not be happy with Shamar Stewart. So Abdullah, any guys, just give me a guy you really like. That would be like a dream scenario, a guy that you're okay with, and then a guy that you wouldn't be too happy with. And some guys in the comment section said Donovan or Travion, Golden, Matt Golden, and then Pat Bryant, Gabe Taylor. So, Abdullah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think you brought up a good point. I think you're right with Shamar Stewart. It's obviously in the first round, if 4.5 sacks, that's not enough. The reality of the situation is you want to draft guys who obviously have potential, but also have proven that they could do it in college. And Shamar Stewart having potential is one thing, but if you're not producing out there, and again, sacks, that's a big thing about being an edge rusher, defensive line. We need to get back to the quarterback. But a guy that I would love, again, I've been a fan of him since day one. We saw him play this past year when he came down to the Blacksburg. Mike Green, I think 17.5 sacks this past couple year in college football. I think he was up there with leading in FBS. But I get it. You play in the Sun Belt Conference, but I think with his ability, with his motor, I think his technique is something that a lot of these edge rushers, I think that's what separates them. Obviously, Abdul Carter is the guy that's going to be taken first, but I think Mike Green, with his ability to get to the quarterback, and he did it against Ohio State this past year too. So many people are going to make the argument that you're playing in a non-Power 5 conference. It is what it is. There's been a lot of NFL players that came out of non-Power 5 conferences and been balling out. So it kind of diminish that argument. But some guy that I would be okay with, again, I love Omarion Hamilton, but I just don't think it's necessary to draft a running back in the first round, considering the fact that we just need more depth at edge rusher in this defensive line. Again, I wouldn't hate it, but I just think with guys like Bashal Tuna out there, the Ohio State running backs out there, Cam Scadabo's out there. I'm just naming, there's so many running backs in this class. There's a lot of depth, so I'll be okay with it. And like you mentioned, Shamar Stewart is a guy that if you really didn't produce in college, what's the point of getting drafted in the first round? For so long here in Washington with Ron Rivera, was drafting guys who were high character, high discipline. Look at Jamin Davis, And again, great guy, but if you're not balling out there on the field, it's not going to transition. You can be a great guy off the field, but if you're not producing on the field, a big reason why I think they're going to do due diligence and look at these guys and their prospects. Because I know Mike Green had some allegations about him a while ago, but I think on the field is one thing, but also off the field. So you got to factor both. And one thing that most are factoring in is, what if Shadur Sanders or Jackson Dart fall to pick 29? If that's the case, I think that trade value of that pick goes up, and I wouldn't mind if they trade back with some team. I think the Giants were one of them, or someone else in the second round that has a high second round pick and get some more draft capital in day 3.
Yeah, I think the Browns and the Texans just made not a big trade, but they traded some picks, and the Browns got a bunch more capital in this year's draft. I think they got 3 fifth-round picks from the trade. So that's a team to watch out for. The Saints are a team to watch out for. The Giants are, obviously, you have to keep in mind that is a divisional team. I don't know if I would risk it with trading in the division, allowing your team or allowing an NFC East rival to draft a quarterback. I just don't know if I would take that risk. But if you really if you know who they're going to take, let's say it's Jackson Dart, which all the signs are pointing to the Giants being interested in Jackson Dart. If you're like, all right, I don't think Jackson Dart's going to be good at all, you trust your valuation, and then the Giants also will have to pay a premium. They're going to have to pay a premium, 2 premiums. One is the premium for trading back into the first round for a quarterback. That's always a little bit more expensive. And the number 2 premium is in division trade. So that'll be a little bit more expensive too. So the Commanders can probably get some, decent amount of, draft capital with the Giants getting their, early second round pick, and then, also getting maybe a third round pick as well. That's something to consider. They have number 99, which is like back end of the third round. To me, that's not very appealing. But if they throw that in and then maybe another pick in the future, so you can get those, that draft capital in 2026 already going, I wouldn't mind that. So just another thing to think about there. Good point by Abdullah, just thinking about the draft trades that could happen. Giants, Shador at 3, it's a possibility. I don't think it's going to happen, though. What's it called? Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. We'll see what happens there. But Shador, I think, is going to fall. From all accounts, he's going to fall. Eli says, who's Nick Scorton? He is a guy that played for Purdue, then transferred over to Texas A&M, had a solid season this past year, 5.5 sacks, didn't play amazing, but he had really good production in 2023 with Purdue, and then put on some weight. He put on some weight and just wasn't the same player. Did really well at the Senior Bowl this past year. So shout out to my guy Mud Abdi, who always trolls me about the Senior Bowl. But sorry, inside joke there with me and Abdullah. But Nick Scorton will be an option for the Commanders at 29. And if you guys, in the comments down below, let me know your thoughts. If they took Nick Scorton, how are you feeling about that? For me, I'm kind of iffy on it. I wouldn't be, in love with it, but I wouldn't hate it. Like, I would give it like, I think it's hard to grade picks right away, but I would give it like a B minus. He's a decent player at a position of need. You're not reaching too much. You're not getting good value either, but you're not reaching too much. Cornerbacks. We didn't talk about cornerbacks. There's been some names that they have, have been floating out there. Jahad Barron, the cornerback from Texas, he was supposed to be one of the top cornerbacks in this class. And there's been a lot of really good players that have been falling. I saw, Daniel Jeremiah's mock drop. Will Johnson was not in the first round. That is crazy. He was like, before last year, supposed to be like a top 5 pick, top 10 pick. Even during, this season, he was supposed to be a top 10 pick. Now he is going to be probably, I don't know. There might be a team that takes a chance on him. I know it's injury issues. Which is why he's falling and he didn't have as good of a season, but still, someone, to watch out for. James Pierce, I don't know in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft if he had him falling out of the first round. I'm pretty sure though that he was available when the Commanders picked. So that, that's another thing to watch out. And in Daniel Jeremiah's pick or mock draft, James Pierce was not there. The Commanders took Jahad Barron with that pick. Also, John Keim in his mock draft had the Commanders taking Maxwell Harrison, cornerback out of Kentucky. I would rather go after a guy like Jahad Barron, a little bit more talented, but he is a smaller guy, but it just gives him a lot of versatility in the backfield. I do think in the secondary, I think the Commanders will be taking a defensive player today, but anything can happen. They could take an offensive lineman, Booker, or, Connerly, the Oregon guy. If they trade back into the second, they could take a running back too. So your thoughts on some of the cornerbacks, and would you want to take a cornerback? And you guys can say that in the chat as well. Let's see. Uptown Dre says, if we draft an edge rusher late, Fidel Diggs from Syracuse is a good option. Older. He's not day one, but elite upside. And mock drafts don't mean a ton, Doug, but sometimes it does with some of these guys who do have good sources. But also at the same time, some of these teams and these sources are feeding them, incorrect information. But Abdullah, your thoughts on, the cornerback position? I guess after that, we can transition it a little bit of Jalen Ramsey talk.
Yeah. So I think you got Mike Sanders still, and the whole Jalen Ramsey talk. I think when you already acquire a guy like Marshawn Lattimore, I'm not saying Jalen Ramsey is washed, but the cap hit's going to be something to monitor too. And I just feel like hopefully Marshawn Lattimore, with how he came back from injury, and A.J. Brown gave him the fits, Mike Evans gave him the fits. So I'm assuming that he's going to, with the fully healthy off season, he's going to be okay. But I wouldn't mind adding another guy in the cornerback room. I don't think Will Johnson's going to be there at pick 29, which is even crazy to consider, even him not being a first rounder, because at one point he was up there with Travis Hunter being neck and neck as the best DB in this upcoming draft. But again, I don't know. The guy out of Kentucky is a name to monitor. But I just think right now we got to focus on the edge rusher position, the defensive line in specific, because I think you can have a great defensive back in the league, and it's not going to really matter that much to the point if the edge rushers aren't getting there. So I think you got to put more emphasis on that. But whatever this Commanders team does, I have full faith that they know what they're going to do. This organization knows what they're doing. I think this is the first time in a while where we don't have to worry about the quarterback position. No quarterbacks were mocked in any of our mock drafts, which is insane. So I think this is going to be a fun first round, and we're going to be waiting a while, man. At least for our lifetime, we haven't waited till pick 29 to see who we drafted.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Let's read some comments. One thing I learned when it comes to drafts, expect the unexpected. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different guys they could go after. Todd says, "Hey guys, how are you? Happy NFL Draft Day." Exactly, happy NFL Draft Day. It's a good day. It'll be interesting. Absolute cinema during these picks. It'll be interesting to just watch, especially the first top 10, top 20, without really having to worry about anything. I feel like if you're if you're a fan, I feel like the most like nerve-wracking pick to have is like probably like pick like 5, 6, 7 just in most drafts, because if you're number 1 and number 2 and number 3, for the most part, you know who you're going to take. 1, almost certain. And then 2 and 3, especially like last year, we knew it was going to be Jalen Daniels, like 90% for the most part, especially when the pick was made. Obviously, weeks before, some people had different opinions. But when it's 5, 6, 7, you have no idea. And obviously, we have no idea. But it's obviously, it's lower stakes when you're picking at 29 versus picking at 5, 6, 7. Eli says, "How about them Capitals? CAPS, caps. Exactly. Good win yesterday, 2-0 series lead." Todd says, "Who is Nick Scorton?" I'll talk about him again. Edge rusher out of Texas A&M, decent run defender, good, decent pass rusher as well. Very good motor. His explosiveness wasn't very good this past year, but that's because he added a lot of weight, because that's what Texas A&M wanted him to do. The year before he was at Purdue, had 10 sacks. Doug says, "Imagine if Abdul Carter falls to 4th or 5th due to Cleveland or New York taking Shador. That would be crazy." I don't think either of those teams will take him. It's looking like he'll fall into the 15, 20, even later range. I don't know. It could all be just rumors, but something to think about there for sure. Jalen Ramsey, we'll keep it short because it is draft day, but it could happen today, a trade. I'm not saying to the Commanders. I know there was a tweet today by I don't know if it was a reputable source. I think he had 75, 80K followers on Twitter. I don't know if he was a Dolphins reporter, but I'm not making a video about it or anything right now. He said there's interest, or they've checked in, the Commanders and a few other teams. I don't think it makes sense. I mean, he's older. He's going to be expensive, and in terms of his contract, and you're going to have to give up draft capital. The Commanders don't have draft capital right now. They have 5 picks. So it doesn't really make sense unless it's like a 7th round pick, which I don't think it's going to be for a guy in Jalen Ramsey who's still pretty good. It doesn't make sense. So we can put that to bed right now. But there are other guys that possibly will be trade targets. Maybe I'll make a video about that. Greg Newsome, cornerback from, for the Cleveland Browns, I believe went to Northwestern. I don't know, one of the two. I always get those schools confused. Evan Neal, trade target. Kayvon Thibodeau. Let me read the list. There was an ESPN list. Let me pull it up right here. Evan Neal, obviously, him and Kayvon Thibodeau would be much harder for the Commanders to get because obviously interdivision trade. But let's go ahead and see some of these names. There are some decent names available. I'm trying to pull it up. But Kayvon Thibodeau, I would like that, but he is a little bit overrated, but I still wouldn't mind it. So I found the list. Will Levis, Treylon Burks, Thibodeau, Neal, Jalen Hyatt. Those are the 3 Giants. Sam Howell, Tyree Wilson could be an interesting option. Drafted I know he was a top 10 pick. I think top 5, top 7 for sure. Let's see. Greg Newsome, Travis Etienne, Owe from the Ravens, edge rusher, Pickens, Rashad White, Keyshawn Boutte, receiver. Those are kind of the younger options. And then vets, Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, Kirk, Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, and Trey Hendrickson. So options right there. Derek says, would you trade 29 for Henderson and another pick? Yeah, I mean, if they can get Henderson, trade back a couple spots, and get another pick, that would be good. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think again acquiring as much draft capital as you can would be nice. And Henderson again is a guy that is intriguing. And again, I wouldn't. It's just it all depends on what this direction of this front office wants to do in this first round. I think whatever they do with this 29th overall pick, I think it's going to dictate what they're going to do in day 2 and day 3. And I'm all in for it. I think whatever they do, I'm full confident that this is the right move because at the end of the day, this is an organization that knows what they're doing. It's not like the prior regime where we would draft guys and it would be a huge reach at pick like from 10 to 15. So I think just whatever they do at pick 29, I have full confidence they know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And we got 70 people in here. Hit that like button. Let's get to 50 likes before the end of the stream. Subscribe to me. Subscribe to Abdullah Ayubi on YouTube. Also, DMV Sports Zone, the best Commanders Instagram page out there. So check them out. But yeah, continue to talk about draft stuff. Any news that comes out, we will talk about while it happens. But those names that I mentioned on the trade block or possible trade block, the guys that interest me, maybe Rachaad White, George Pickens, I'm definitely not interested in. You're gonna have to pay him significant, money, but also significant draft capital, and he's a drama queen diva in my opinion. Owe, wouldn't mind that. Travis Etienne, I wouldn't hate it. Greg Newsome would like that. Tyree Wilson would like that, and then Thibodeau, I wouldn't mind that. Traylon Burks, I don't know, maybe. Best team in the DMV, Capitals or Commanders? I mean, got to give it to the Caps. They've been consistent for a long time, but Commanders soon might overtake them, but we will see. In terms of, all right, this is a good question. Does Omarion Hampton fall to 29? I take that. I would too. I think I've seen a little bit more of not hate on Hampton, but people being more down on him recently, and I get that, but I do think he would be a solid option, and I've seen a lot of tweets and stuff about him being a really good fit for the Commanders scheme. So if that's the case, take him at 29. That offense is going to be insane. You got Hampton at 20, your running back, even Robinson, he can still give you some carries, and Eckler. And then you got, a decent offensive line. You got some good receivers. And obviously you got the quarterback, JD5. So Eli says, if it came down to Hampton or Pierce at 29, it would be a very difficult choice. I think Pierce makes more sense in terms of player, but also I don't know if, in terms of the character stuff, if that, what I would do there. So just something to consider. Who would you rather have, Hampton or Pierce?
Oh, man. I think for me, we're more set in the running back room than the edge rusher room. And I think just because we have those later draft picks, the running back depth in this class is just very stacked. I mentioned those guys, all those guys. Again, Bashaw Toone's a guy who I think with his explosiveness could really take the top off of defense. But I think edge rusher is a guy that is a position that you just need to get right. You need to get right soon because, again, you lose Dante Fowler's option and he goes to Dallas. You just want to get a guy that can just be a game wrecker.
Yep, I agree. And Doug says, remember BPA over position need. For me, I'm always more of a BPA at position of need. So, obviously, if the best player available is a quarterback for the Commanders, they're not taking one, obviously. So, there are exceptions. And then also, I would say, all right, give, for the first round, let's say you got 3-4 of your top positions of need. So for the Commanders, edge rusher, running back, and then, I don't know, cornerback and O-line. Out of those, you're going to have a bunch of different players. Take the best player available out of those positions. So for me, that's, what I think you should do. But also for the Commanders, they have so many, smaller holes that, they could really go anywhere. They're not fully solidified at any position that, they really could add anyone to any group besides quarterback. And, it would make sense. Eli says Travion Henderson in the first round. I don't think so. Or sorry, in the second round. If it is, it's going to have to be a trade back scenario. We're not going to be able to take him at 61. I'm sorry. Not going to be able to take him at 61. But my guys that I think, watch out for. Let me pull up my tweet because I did have some options here for the Commanders that the names I've heard the most, and I'll add some. So let's see. So Omarion Hampton, Nick Scorton, Jahad Barron, Shamar Stewart. Those guys are names I've heard a lot when it comes to the Commanders. And then Booker, Travion Henderson, and Harrison have, are some of the other names that I've heard to the Commanders as well. So those are the main guys. And then, you throw in Mike Green as a possibility, maybe a receiver in there. But out of those names, Abdul, who is someone that, appeals to you? And Todd says, who's Shamar Stewart? He's another Texas A&M defensive lineman. Just the thing is, 1.5 sacks in the past season. But he has, he's the most athletic edge rusher in NFL history, going into the draft in NFL history, according to the metrics, but doesn't have the production. I'm not a big fan of drafting him.
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned, Mike Green's the guy that I think if we go edge, we got to go him, run to the podium if he's still there, because I think at one point he was top 10, top to 15 range. But if we're going running back, you got to go with Omarion Hampton. I think you can compare his play style to Nick Chubb. I think how explosive he can be in the backfield. And if you pair him up with Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, with the offense that already has Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, with Cliff Kingsbury calling the plays, and you have Jaden Daniels, an emerging superstar quarterback, I think the sky's the limit for this offense. But as much as I love scoring points and all, I think you have to put more emphasis on this defense because, again, you're playing against the Philadelphia Eagles twice a year. You just won the Super Bowl. You're going up against the Detroit Lions. You're going to put up a lot of points.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, I think I would – and people are talking about kicker as well. That could be an option day 3. Again, they don't have a lot of draft capital, so maybe not in this draft. Maybe they sign a guy as an undrafted free agent. There's always going to be talented guys, and you trust Izzo, the special teams coach, Dan Izzo, I believe, to find a good option. But yeah, there's a bunch of different possibilities. I would say if I had to guess, the 3 positions, if I had to put 3 positions, all right, these are going to be the guy, they're going to take one of these 3 positions. Edge rusher, cornerback, and running back are the options. And then if I had to go one more, I would go offensive line. I know that's a bunch of different positions. I still don't know who I have them taking. I really don't. I don't know. I'm going to put it out before the draft starts. Right now, I think Nick Scourton is a safe pick. If none of the guys that they really want are there, I think Nick Scourton is a good insurance policy. All right, we can go to the podium, feel fine with it. Good player at a position of need. You're not super reaching for him, so that's someone to watch out for. And then but if he is, if they have some good players available, like I said, any of the other players, at those positions that I mentioned, maybe besides running back Booker, if he's there, they'll take him. Jahad Barron, if he's there, I think they'll take him. Donovan Azaraku, if he's there, they'll take him. I think he's going to be gone, though. Mike Green, they'll probably take him if he's there. So just some, Harrison, too, options as well. Those are all, things to think about. Eli says Jonathan Joseph's still good at cornerback. Maybe we, don't need one with Marshawn Lattimore. Mike Sanders still no. I don't think cornerback is such a big need. And Jonathan Jones, I believe, is who you meant. But yeah, it's not a huge need in my opinion in terms of the current year, but in terms of the future, I think it is a little bit of a need. So Todd says, do you see Antoine Powell-Ryland getting drafted by anybody? He's definitely getting drafted. I mean, the production was insane. He's a good player, good guy. I don't know, not day 1 and doesn't look like day 2, but day 3 he'll get drafted for sure. I think there's a lot of Hokies that will get drafted. Obviously, Bashal Tootin, who I would love if the Commanders took him. I think he's going to be one of the sleepers. Powell-Ryland, Dorian Strong is an option. Daquan Felton, Peoples, the defensive tackle. My favorite player, my biggest sleeper in this draft is Jalen Lane, wide receiver, Virginia Tech. I would love if the Commanders took him in the 4th round. That's right where his range is. I think he's a stud. Would really, really like him if they really like it if the Commanders took him. D'Angelo says Nick's a good run defender. He is. All right, Abdullah, obviously we both go to Virginia Tech. Any Virginia Tech Hokies that you would like the Commanders to get? I mean, we mentioned some of the guys, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think Tuin's going to be the first Hokie off the board. And again, I wouldn't mind because his explosiveness also I think he had ran a 4.32, the fastest out of all the running backs in this draft class. Also, Antoine Powell-Ryland, I think his ability to take over games. I mean, I think he had, I'm looking at it right now what Todd said, 4 sack games for Tech in 2 seasons. And when they're talking about APR, so he's a game wrecker. And it's kind of funny because I just don't. At one point, maybe I was thinking second or third, but I think just because like how like the other edge rushers have just been so much more productive, I think he'll fall into that day 3, maybe late round 3, early round 4. Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, Dorian Strong is a guy that also who was very productive at Virginia Tech. So I wouldn't mind if we got a Hokie in Washington, but it just really depends on what round and if that player is there. And Aeneas Peebles is a guy, defensive tackle, who didn't produce that much, but also is a great run defender. So that's something we desperately need here in Washington. You got to stop the run because, again, you're playing against Saquon Barkley twice a year. You're playing against the Jahmyr Gibbs of the world and Bijan Robinson all in your conference.
Yeah, exactly. We got 95 people in here. Hit that like button, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Comment down below who you want the Commanders to take. This is going to be a crazy day. We're going to have to sit through a lot. I will be, I don't think I'll be live. I'll let all the other guys do that. I know they love to do that, and I'll just take the draft in. But we will be updating you guys with draft videos later today. I will be talking about targets for tomorrow, the best remaining guys available for the Commanders on day 2. And who knows, they might not pick today, guys. They might not pick today, which, wouldn't be ideal. A scenario I would love is if they trade back like from 29 to like 31 or something. And, we're able to get right in front of the Eagles, get who we want. And then obviously 29 to 31, you're not getting a lot of draft capital, but you're getting a little bit. You can recoup some of those, picks that you went, you used to get Debo, what's his name, Marshawn Lattimore and Larry Tunsil, and you still pick on day 1 and you still get a decent player. But, James Pierce, I don't think James Pierce is happening. I talked about it. Kai mentioned it. I would be surprised if James Pierce is a Commander today. He might not be picked today, guys. He might not be picked today. He seems like just a total guy that's going to be, one of those guys that you're like, oh, how did he not get drafted in the first round? And, we're going to be talking about him on day 2 as a possible pick, not for necessarily the Commanders, but just people in general. James Pierce, I'll cross him off the board for the Commanders. I think it's going to be an edge rusher or cornerback is my guess. I just think a lot of their good edge rushers will be gone, so they might be forced to take a cornerback or maybe a running back. But also, the running back class is so deep, they might feel like they can get a running back on day 2 or day 3. Doug says, honestly, the Wizards draft day is way more important than Commanders. I agree. Abdullah here is a big Wizards fan, does work for Locked On Wizards. So that will be interesting. I mean, it's not even the draft day that's important. It's the lottery day to see where the Wizards pick, because they could pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I believe is the orders. So hopefully they're 1, 2, or 3. That would be great. They can, take Flag. They can take Flag or Bailey or Harper, the Rutgers guys. City Lim says, happy draft day, Pedro. Thanks for excellent coverage. Appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk for a few more minutes here. Any questions you guys have, we'll go ahead and talk about them. And then we'll go ahead and end the stream in like 5 or 10 minutes. But I'm trying to see any other last minute rumors that are floating out there about the Washington Commanders. There's more and more buzz about Giants, Browns, teams like that trading back into the first round. So, hey, that's good for the Commanders if they want to be able to, recoup some draft, capital and take some players. Honestly, I don't think, guys, they need to take a lot. This draft class isn't super important for them. Yeah, fill some holes and stuff, but they had a lot of draft picks last year. That was obviously the important draft class. Not only Jaden, you had 3 second-round picks. This draft class isn't super strong, so it's fine if they only have 5 picks. And if you trade back from the from the first round into the second, I would rather get a pick for next year instead of this year. Especially if you trade back from let's say 61, which is in the second round, late second round, I would rather. You're going to trade from 61 to whatever, 70 something. you're gonna have that 71, whatever, 75 pick that you trade back for, but then I would say you get maybe another pick or two, at least one of those picks, save it for next year because they also don't have a lot of draft capital for next year. So that's what I would do. And this draft class isn't super strong. Get a couple starters, fill a couple positions of need, and recoup some draft capital for next year is what I would say. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to find players. There's strong draft classes, there's weak draft classes, but the good GMs, good executives always are able to find hidden gems. So Abdullah, any kind of last thoughts? And real quick, Gus Bus says, would you trade number 29 for an early third and next year's first round pick? Next year's first. It depends on the team. It really depends on the team there. Definitely would consider it. Early third and next year's first rounder. Yeah, I think I would do that for sure. I would do that for sure. It just depends on what team it is. But honestly, even if it's a good team, you're going to first round pick for next year. You're still getting an early third round pick. You're really losing a pick of that. You're going from end of the first to beginning of the second. So let's say 35 draft slots. That's not that bad. You're definitely sacrificing this year, but a first round pick, you can do a lot with that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely. I think that's an interesting scenario, and I think it just really depends on the team too. But I still take it no matter what the team. But for me, I think the take that I've been seeing these past couple of days, I think either running back Bashal Tune will be a commander out of these next couple of days, or I think Maryland wide receiver Ty Felton, who played with our boy Hamza in high school at a Stonebridge and Nova guy. I think he produced a lot in Maryland. I think he could translate to be that wide receiver 3 and potentially take up the wide receiver 2 role if something happens to Debo or Terry, knocking on wood here. So I think one of those two guys would be a commander. That's my hot take.
Yeah, I could see it. Kimes mentions the Bashal Tootin connection there, not connection, but their interest in him. So wouldn't mind that. Let's get one Hokie. I think they can make that happen. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's stream. I'll go ahead and give my final prediction. You go first, and I'm gonna still think.
Yeah, no, dude, it sucks, Pedro, because again, I don't know. I really don't know. I really want this team to get more draft capital, but I also want that edge rusher that could change the game. So I'm not gonna say it because this would be terrible if we waited till pick 29 and then we see a trade happens and we're not trading in the first round. But I'll say this. I think we get that edge rusher at pick 29, and I think Mike Green falls in our laps. And I think there's going to be some trades in that second round or later in day 3 where we acquire more draft capital. I just think Dan Quinn wants that guy. He wants his Micah Parsons, and I think Mike Green could be that guy. And who knows? Maybe we're wrong and we don't pick at all. But I think the Commanders are going to stay put at 29 and draft their guy.
Yeah, I'll go. That's a good one just to go be different. But I think I agree with that. I would go Mike Green right now. I would say Nick Scourton, who I've been talking about a lot. And then if not, Jahad Barron, if he somehow falls. And then a sleeper is Femi. Oh, I forgot how to pronounce his name, but the nickname is Femi, the UCLA edge rusher. I've been seeing some buzz about him going in the first round. I probably would say more second round, but he's a name to watch as well. But thanks for watching, guys. Thanks to Abdullah for popping on. Make sure you guys check him out, Abdullah UB on YouTube, and then also DMV Sports Zone on Instagram. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace, guys.